Well, good evening, everyone. It's Thursday, March 5th. It's around 8 o'clock. Bitcoin is trading just a tick under 71,000. And after yesterday's rally, it's given back a little bit of its gains on the big news story that the banks, surprise, surprise, are once again lining up to block crypto regulations in order to hold on to their oligopoly and government subsidized yields, where they don't have to pay interest to depositors and can pocket everything. All I could say is, and it's not really an all I can say, the most important thing I would say is it reminds me of analogies that Asimov did in a speech. He talked about the horse, and he talked about the barge operators in England when the horse and buggies were trying to come around and saying we can use our new method of conveyance in order to move traffic and move goods. The barge operators said, well, by going 15 miles an hour or more, by Bernoulli's principle, we worry about the safety of the people in the coaches because they'll have the air sucked out of their lungs. And it's a famous speech. He gave it in the 70s, and essentially the theory of the speech was new technology always creates winners and losers. The losers always try to claim that they're protecting the public good, and in almost every case, they're completely full of shit. And that's what's going on here. So let's just break it down really quickly. The banks get basically over $100 billion a year in extra money on their net interest spread. Now, I did a post yesterday, and I'll do a longer form article in the future, but basically, the money center banks are making substantively more money than the community banks. And the reason that that matters is that the community banks are the ones they're using to say that you shouldn't be having this whole debate over stable coins and yield. That's what they're saying. And I really find that interesting because the community banks make, believe it or not, on their loan portfolios, they're earning well over 5%, while the big banks are earning well under 4%. And so the community banks have an edge and can afford to pay more interest if, in fact, they needed to from a competitive point of view. So they would be impacted dramatically less, not to mention the fact that community banks have significantly more expertise. They could charge fees in cases where the net interest margin wasn't very irrelevant. But this notion that's in the regulators' heads, remember, most of our not regulators, congressional, members are so damn old that they feel like it's a wonderful life, is they're remembering it as their own history. And they think of the Bailey brothers, building and loan as something that needs to be protected. And so they think, oh my God, we can't allow that to be taken away from us. But the truth is, there's almost no risk of that. At the same time, they're conveniently forgetting the fact that this interest subsidy that's going to the big banks was put in large measure, large pieces of it, the ability to get interest at the Fed was put in 2008 as a temporary measure to alleviate the financial stress that the banks caused by their own fiscal mismanagement, their own risk management problems, where most of them, including the firm I worked for, Citigroup at the time, was almost certainly fully bankrupt if they were forced to resolve all their accounts. But instead, they were given bailouts and this cash infusion by allowing them to park money and make money on that money that was parked. So that is what's going on here. It is the banks using their political might, which of course is augmented by the literally hundreds of billions of dollars that they've been given in excess interest over the last decade or so. And they're using that to buy off whatever influence, however you want to call it, the Congress. But the ultimate irony is it's a completely irrelevant fight. Yes, that's what I said. Irrelevant. Why? Well, because in the short run, it's relevant. In the short run, if you could just give rewards on stable coins, then people can effectively mimic a banking structure, use payments for stable coins, and let the people in those accounts earn interest. And therefore, the money will be sticky. They'll keep it there. No problem. It's very easy. But where the market is actually going and what is actually better for Bitcoin and the crypto market is a much more fluid system where new operators such as Kraken, who just got their Federal Reserve skinny license, and there are multiple other firms who have applied for banking licenses in the crypto community, will start offering an integrated platform where they can have the modern equivalent of a checking account, where they can use the stablecoin payment rails to pay bills and have automated sweeps. So when they run out of money in their payment account, you can take their investments as long as they're tokenized and 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, convert from the whatever their investment was in back into the stablecoin for automated payments. Now, if you think about what that does, that broadens the notion of money market funds. It means that you don't need to leave a lot of money in the payment accounts. You use that as a conduit. That is where this is going. And when that happens, the banking industry is going to be revolutionized. What you will see is banks adopting stablecoins as their payment rails and also adopting the ability to offer investment accounts and trading accounts in that way. And that is a very healthy thing for the American consumer, for the world consumer, really. And that will trigger dramatic changes. People will not be able to make money and collect economic rents because the government gives them an oligopoly. They'll have to make money for expertise. Now, the community banks are going to be fine. Why? Because the community banks can offer a good yield to their clients because they can offer it in such a way because they're making money on their expertise and knowing who the most credit-worthy borrowers are. But the money center banks will have less of that. There'll still be some, but capital flows have become more mobile, more global, and everything will compensate. The beauty of this system is that with stablecoins, you don't need fractional reserve banking. Stablecoins are fully reserved. So the more money is sitting in the stablecoin system, the less risk of run on the bank, because you can't have a run when your money is already there. The problem is when it's lent out without any covenant against it and you have 95% of your money unbacked at the bank, then there can run. So understanding that we're going to end up with a situation where capital that is going to be put at risk will be in one set of accounts and that is not will be in a different, i.e. stable account. That is a much healthier system. So unfortunately, the banks don't like this. Why? Because when you eliminate protective competitive moats, although that competition comes in, margins will compress. And when those margins will compress, what happens? The last thought is the really simple one. And that's something policymakers don't want to admit, is if you take the economic rent away from the banks, the people who make the most money are the builders, the entrepreneurs, the savers, and the public, who now have more money to spend, more money to invest, and the economy grows healthier. It's essentially like removing a parasite from the system. And that is where this is going. That is why the fight over clarity is such a big deal. Well, enough of a diatribe for today. Understand that I wanted to phrase all this because it's more or less the same thing that people like Eric Trump have been saying. And Eric and I obviously are on the same point here. I'm just phrasing it in terms of pure economics and pure power. That's what's happening. Okay. With that, we'll see if we have yet another day dominated by war. I fully expect the market to continue to chop around these levels, maybe slide a bit if the war goes south, maybe if there's a cessation or things go better overnight, maybe we'll get a bit of a rally. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. What I do know is I think Bitcoin has seen the lows, barring any major catastrophe, and I think we are going to grind higher from here, but very slowly, and probably stay in a range for a little bit. Well, that's it for tonight. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you again soon.